Gabriel bench, Maddison looking irresistible, and of course Erling Haaland scoring goals. FPL is well and truly back, and in this video I'm going to be answering all of the hot topics from this game week just gone. So make sure you drop a like on the video, make sure you smash that subscribe button, you legends who've got the channel over 7,000. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, we need to talk about this situation with Gabriel, one of the highest owned defenders in the game, got benched out of nowhere at home against Nottingham Forest. And I think the big panic is, why was he benched and is it going to happen going forward? So first and foremost, what we know is that after the game, Arteta confirmed that Gabriel was benched for tactical reasons. He isn't injured, so there's no panic there. But there is a slight panic that it was tactical. Therefore, Gabriel is actually droppable in this Arteta system this season. Last year, and ever present in that defence. This year, he has options available for him and clearly can be flexible in the decisions that he makes. And that was evident in the game just gone with Partey playing at right back, inverted into the midfield. I think it was very specific for the team that they played. Nottingham Forest, one of the lowest possessions in the team in the league. I do think that Arsenal was setting up to basically just dominate the ball. And in that scenario, I don't think Gabriel is essential for this Arsenal team. So not injured, but it was tactical, which is a little bit of a worry. Now, the saving grace, in some sense, for Gabriel going forward was Timber went off with an injury. Now, the current status is unclear. However, it looks unlikely that Timber is going to be available for game week 2. So, as a Gabriel owner, this is only good news, I think. So, we're expecting Tierney probably to come in at left back if Zinchenko isn't confirmed fit. But that does mean that they're one less defender down in that area. So I do think Gabriel is in a position where he might just get forced back into this Arsenal team with that tricky away game against Crystal Palace. So what should we do ahead of game week 2? For me, being a Gabriel owner, I think we stick. I think we hold off for game week 2, get an understanding whether it is going to be clearly out of the team and tactical reasons are going to also implement into away games. If that is to happen, then game week 3 is a clear sell for Gabriel. However, I think going into game week 2 with the injury to Timber, I want a little bit more information to know whether that was a unique situation or not against Forest. And because of that reason, I'm going to recommend holding Gabriel for now. We might get some news during the week from press conferences or team leaks about the situation at Arsenal. But for now, I think he is a hold. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Next up is the battle of the Spurs midfielders. With the move of Harry Kane going to Bayern Munich, it has opened a door for these Spurs midfielders. In particular, Richarlison and Maddison, who were on the radar for a lot of FPL managers coming into game week 1, and even more so now that we know Kane has officially left the club. Now, I want to focus particularly on Richarlison and Maddison. Main reason being, Maddison we know is one of the top picks in this Spurs midfield, but importantly, with Kane gone, Richarlison playing as a number 9 for 90 minutes is a perfect opportunity to assess how both of those got on in game week 1 and give us an idea on whether one of those have already become essential for our FPL teams. Now, I've got the current heat maps for both players courtesy of Fantasy Football Fix. Make sure you check it out. Link is in the bio. Richarlison here, first and foremost, we can see had very little touches in comparison to Maddison, which is absolutely understandable. Someone like Maddison is all about getting on that ball and dictating the game. Richarlison, on the other hand, main goal here is to link up play that number 9 and stretch the game. And we can see he did have some touches in and around the penalty area, which is always promising news when we are considering number 9, but not as prominent as we would expect. It is worth noting Brentford are a very good team, especially at home. Now, when we look at Maddison's heat map, there's a lot more to look at here. Predominant of the touches is in that middle third, which we are going to expect from Maddison throughout the course of this season. But what's really important here is he was on corners from both flanks. And when we are looking at FPL options, this is just a huge bonus point when we are looking at considerations for players. They just have more routes to points when they are on set pieces, and Maddison is ticking the boxes for this here. Now, looking at the underlying numbers and the actual output for both players, we need to get an understanding of whether one was really unlucky, whether one overperformed, and of course just get a general sense of what direction these players are going in for their influence in the team. Now, of course, Maddison picked up 2 assists and was one of the highest scoring players in the game, whereas Richarlison only came away with 2 FPL points. Now, I want to draw your attention to Maddison first and foremost. In the attempted assist column, he racked up 6. He was absolutely at the heart of everything good in this Spurs team, and that's just a common trend of what we saw in pre-season. Expected goals, as we would expect from Maddison at 0.1, he isn't going to be that main man stretching the game. He is going to be what we're seeing in the expected assists column of 0.83. Everything good happening at Spurs is going to come through Maddison, and why I think his minutes are absolutely locked in. And his expected FPL points at 7.13, decent underlying numbers. Now, Richarlison, on the other hand, had similar amount of shots with 2, same 1 on target, but the attempted assist, as we expect, is going to be only 1, but the XG at 0.26, so slightly higher than Maddison's, and he did pick up some better goal scoring opportunities in that number 9 role. But when we are looking at the general play, Maddison is head and shoulders above Richarlison for this one game week. But again, we cannot draw to conclusions based on this one game week. So just covering off a few points here. Rotation risk, is that an issue for either? Right now at the time of recording, I think both are locked in for 90 minutes for Spurs. Maddison in particular, I think that is just going to be a trend that happens throughout the entire season. Worth noting, I think Spurs, rumours are, they are looking for a forward, maybe to compete with Richarlison, and that could put pressure on Richarlison's minutes later down the line. But if you're looking for game week 2, 3, 4, I think it is fine for minutes. And the other option is, and we need to consider, is should we buy either of these for game week 2? Have they done enough to stand out and say we need to own these? And I think the answer is no. Man United at home in game week 2, I think, is going to be a goal fest. However, I don't think it's the right entry point for Spurs players. Give ourselves another opportunity to gain a bit more information, and then we can look to pull the trigger in game week 3 if we need to on either player. But if I had to pick one right now, I love the idea of Richarlison playing as a number 9 in this system, but I think Maddison is just going to be an ever-present point scorer in this Spurs team. And for that reason, if I had to buy one, it would be Maddison right now, but my general advice is hold off for now. Next up, I wanted to look at 2 forwards that really caught my eye in game week 1, and that is going to be Nicholas Jackson of Chelsea and Alexander Isak of Newcastle, who has already had a price rise to 7.6 million. That brace that he scored against Aston Villa has clearly reminded managers what an unbelievable talent he is, and managers are jumping in on him as an option, which I do understand completely. Now, I've got the shot maps up right now for both players, courtesy of Fantasy Football Fix. And first up, we can see Nicholas Jackson's here. He had 4 shots in the game against Liverpool, all of those being in the penalty area. And for anyone that didn't watch the game, he was very, very impressive. Chelsea in particular, from about the 30th minute onwards, really did take control of the game. And Nicholas Jackson had some fantastic opportunities in the game. And he did show what I think he is going to adapt quite well to the Premier League going into this season. And being only 7 million, I really think that he needs to be on our radar for our teams. Now, Alexander Isak is a player that was always on our radar, but because of the fixture difficulty, we weren't necessarily considering him. But when he puts in performances like this against Aston Villa, we can see what an unbelievable talent he is. You can see 3 shots in the box, all of those excellent chances, and him converting 2 of those. Now, I need to read through a couple of the stats here just to give you a general idea on how these both perform. So, Alexander Isak 3 shots compared to Nicholas Jackson's 4. The XG was very high for both of these. Nicholas Jackson at 1.19, and this is against Liverpool. I know they are going to concede goals while they don't have a DM, but to put that number up against Liverpool is very impressive. And Alexander Isak, 1.04 XG, so really solid numbers for both. Now, what I love about this is the expected assists for both were 0.0. These guys were greedy, and that is exactly what we want in FPL. We want the players that are going to be spearheading their teams and getting all of the chances. And while Nicholas Jackson was on the pitch, while Isak was on the pitch, both of those were the goal scorers, and that is what we want. Similar numbers to what we saw of Callum Wilson, all XG, no XA, and that is really promising when we're looking at Alexander Isak in particular. And also worth noting, and why it's called big chance forwards, is both had 3 big chances. They're getting in amongst it, and I really do think that both of these need to be a consideration for our teams. Now, of course, there needs to be some caveats to why we're not going to buy them for game week 2, as we need to have some pros, some cons. Now, first up, I wanted to bring up the fixture analyzer for both teams, and we can see Chelsea's long-term fixtures are quite decent. West Ham away in game week 2, followed by those 2 amazing home games against Luton and Nottingham Forest in 3 and 4, away against Bournemouth, Villa at home, and Fulham away. So in particular, that stretch between 3 and 5 looks essential to have at least one Chelsea attacking player if they are going to continue putting up those numbers. Newcastle, on the other hand, is a little bit different. City, Liverpool and Brighton in the next three, I would deem very tricky fixtures, although we saw what problems Chelsea caused to this Liverpool team. I think Newcastle are going to do equally as much damage to Liverpool, then Brentford, Sheffield United and Burnley. So I think on the face of it, the fixtures are quite difficult for Alexander Isak. However, I really do think that this Newcastle team, in particular at St James's Park, can cause any team's problems. And I really think that they are going to be scoring against Liverpool in game week 3. So I wouldn't be as put off by those fixtures for him, even though they do look quite daunting going forward. You would be tempted by the Nicholas Jackson fixtures naturally. Now, what is the rotation risk for both of these players? I think Isak's substitution, which happened around the 67th minute, was game state. Newcastle were pretty much in the clear then, and Callum Wilson came in for his goal later on in the game. But I think the answer is, I think Alexander Isak is too important to this Newcastle team not to start week in, week out. But I do think with a goal scorer like Callum Wilson waiting in the wings, his game time is always going to be questionable, or at least his substitutions are going to be consistently early if the game is wrapped up. And because of that reason, I think we do just need to put a little red flag on Alexander Isak and know that he might only be a 70-minute man if Newcastle are cruising in games. Whereas Nicholas Jackson, on the other hand, there are no other options in the team. Yes, Raheem Sterling can play down the middle, but he was woeful against Liverpool. With Brozier still not up to match fitness and then Nkunku out long term, Jackson's minutes are absolutely guaranteed. And while he's posting up these numbers, I would have Nicholas Jackson as a bit more of a priority than Alexander Isak. Now, should we buy either of these for game week 2? My thought process is I would avoid Alexander Isak for now. I know a lot of the community are going for him for game week 2, but with that City away fixture, I think that's just another opportunity to assess the situation and see where Newcastle and Isak are at this moment. Nicholas Jackson, if you want to pull the trigger, game week 2 is not a bad time. But I ask you, who are you selling to get Jackson? If it's Watkins at home against Everton, I don't think it's the right time. I think game week 3 is the right entry point for Nicholas Jackson in our teams. And which one do we buy? I think the answer right now is going to be Nicholas Jackson, just because of those brilliant 3 and 4 fixtures, knowing that we can keep a little bit of money in the bank and we can then flip it over to Alexander Isak in 5 or 6 if he continues this unbelievable start to the season. Now, of course, one of the biggest debates going into game week 1 was the battle of the 6.5 million midfielders. I think there were always 4 that were earmarked as the options for game week 1, and those were Mbeumo, Eze, Diaby and Mitoma. And I thought this would be a really good opportunity just to check in, see how they got on. Did any of these really stand out and make us want to just move straight to them? So this is hopefully going to help you out for the 6.5 million midfielders, and I hope the one that you went for actually did pay off, because we're looking at the numbers right now. All 4 of these done very well. Mbeumo topped the charts for XG at 1.24, but it is worth noting there was a penalty involved in that, and penalties make up about 0.76 of the XG. So we did still put up a decent, healthy XG of around 0.5-ish outside of that penalty. So really promising numbers for Mbeumo, and playing as a front 2 in that Brentford team alongside Vissa, we know that they do flip between a 3-5-2, a 4-3-3, depending on the opposition. And that was really good to see Mbeumo play the full 90 minutes as basically a forward. And we can see he had 3 shots, 2 of those on target, but an expected assist of 0. And as I mentioned, I'm all about that. When I'm buying a midfielder or a forward and all they're doing is accumulating expected goals, that is music to my ears. And we can see that with the expected FPL points being 8.48. And for those saying, yeah, but he had a penalty, that is just another positive for somebody like Mbeumo. The likes of Diaby and Mitoma do not have that avenue to points. You want players that have different routes to points, and Mbeumo ticked that box in game week 1. Now, Eze was probably the overall performer, but underperformer of game week 2. He only came in with 3 points, but for those that had Eze, you can count yourselves very, very unlucky. You can see he had 8 shots in the game, 7 attempted assists, an XG of 0.58 and an expected assist of 0.62. Ridiculous numbers. I cannot believe he didn't get at least on the score sheet or pick up an assist in this game. And I think if you are sat there right now with Eze, I know the others did get the points, but you should not be worried at all. He put in a fantastic performance, and I would not be going sideways from Eze to any of these options after he put up numbers like that. He is a clear talisman in this team. And moving into another player who was new into the league, of course, Diaby, posted some decent numbers against which I would argue the toughest game of all 4 that they had to play. 3 shots, 2 of those on target, 2 attempted assists, and really good underlying numbers from an all-round perspective. 0.35 XG, 0.46 XA. Again, with Villa's fixtures being a little bit mixed, I don't think it is necessarily the time to go in on Diaby, especially if you already have Watkins. I think we could hold off for now and wait until the fixtures turn for Aston Villa, but a fantastic debut for Diaby. And last up, Mitoma. Again, another player that played majority of the game, 90 minutes for Mitoma. Only Diaby was the one to come off slightly early, and that was only 2 minutes early. Now, Mitoma's numbers were a little bit more underwhelming. Only 1 shot, 5 attempted assists though, which is really good to see. 0.03 XG, a little bit worrying, and a 0.71 expected assist. So again, we can't come to any conclusions based on game week 1, but what we are seeing right now, based on just game week 1, Mbeumo on penalties and of course racking up decent XG, kind of showing that he was not necessarily rightly so the best 6.5 million, but understandable why the community were going towards him. But for me, Eze is the one that's flying under the radar here, and I think naturally we're going to see no returns and managers selling, and I think it's the complete opposite. I think you absolutely hold if you are an Eze owner. So should you sell your 6.5 million midfielder? Absolutely not. All 4 of these done fantastic. They justify their pick and they justify their hold going forward. I think you hold yours for the next few game weeks unless injuries arise, and then we can reassess after a little bit more information or when the fixtures turn. And the other big question is, if you have cash in the bank, do you sell your 6.5 to go up into a Richarlison or a Maddison? And my answer is going to be no. Spurs with their tricky game against Man United is a reason to avoid them for now. Wait off until game week 3 and then we can reassess whether our 6.5 needs to become a Spurs midfielder or we need to downgrade one of our more expensive midfielders to a Spurs one. For now, all of these look great and I think all of them could return in game week 2. So last up, quickly, I just wanted to touch on the situation going into game week 2 and 3. I think the general consensus in the FPL community is to roll your transfer in game week 2 to have 2 free transfers in game week 3. But I just want to draw your attention to the fixtures for game week 3. Now, on your screens here is my team going into game week 3, but I do think I have a lot of the popular picks, so this will kind of offer a little bit of value here. Everton at home against Wolves, Chelsea players at home against Luton, Brighton players at home against West Ham, Arsenal players at home against Fulham. We have Man United at home against Nottingham Forest, Brentford at home against Palace, Villa away against Burnley, and of course Man City away against Sheffield United, and of course Spurs away against Bournemouth as well. So why do I say this? I think the big reason being is this. Going into game week 3, if this was my team, there is no way, unless an injury arises or certain circumstances happen, where I'm going to use a free transfer in my starting 11 or players that are actually important for my team. All of these players are having amazing fixtures, and the question is, do we need 2 free transfers for game week 3? That's the big question. I think going into game week 2, because the community always push rolling your transfer, I want to say to you, the fixtures in 3 are so good, you might get a situation where you're rolling game week 2, and in game week 3, all you do is like a 4 million defender to another 4 million defender. And while that's absolutely fine, it strengthens the squad in general. I'm just saying, I don't think there's going to be any transfers needed for game week 3 if injuries do not arise. So if you're in a position where Gabriel is stressing you out, we get a little bit more information later down the line that he's a risk again, I do not think it's a bad move using a transfer in game week 2. Don't worry about having to roll it just because game week 3 looks fantastic. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. I just want to draw your attention a little bit more in advance. I think we could be a bit more aggressive in game week 2, and use our transfers if we need to. Yes, guys, okay, so that's going to wrap up today's video. I really hope it's provided some value. I'll be doing these each and every week, deep diving into game week 1 and, of course, previewing going forward. And I will be releasing my game week 2 transfer plans in the next video. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure you do drop a like. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Cheers.